coronation as succession continues on. The royal succession, Estolian traditions, promises we revere, contentment instead of fear.
(1976), Southern California. The instruction of women, instituted by Rhea, was perhaps one of the most profound innovations in Estolian education since Amador established the Acolyte and Elder programs. One of the issues Rhea's apprentices debated was the role of women in the nation. To an outsider, Estolia seemed like a prime example of the inequality of the sexes. But the older women who were Kaylee for 10 or more years would argue that it was actually more backwards for men. They could only marry at the age of 30, had to yield up their souls, and if they lost their Kaylee, they would die. Emerald Amador, Master's Essay.
Wraith!
Her sister hollered to her from downstairs. Wraith sighed heavily and bent down to kiss the forehead of her doll. She tucked the blanket more securely around the doll's chin, and then moved towards the door just as her sister, in a voice not to be ignored, called her name again.
Wraith!
Coming!
She cried out. Willow was going through the mail. Their father was out of town for the next 2 weeks, and until he returned, Willow, at the age of 18, was the boss.
Come down here right now!
Willow demanded once she saw her sister descending the stairs. Wraith rolled her eyes to the ceiling. If only her father had allowed her to stay with Alyssa Perkins or Faye Lowry instead of remaining at the house with her sister. She was 10 years old, after all, plenty old enough to stay with friends. Whatever had upset her sister clearly needed to be dealt with. Wraith skipped down the last of the stairs and then settled into the chair her sister was pointing at.
Do you know what this is?
Willow waved the paper vigorously towards her.
Did you win Publishing Clearinghouse?
Wraith asked, trying to keep the smirk out of her voice.
Stupid. It's called Publishers Clearinghouse.
Willow was scathing. She slapped the paper on the table and said,
This is your progress report.
Wraith looked at the yellow paper, wondering why her sister was all worked up.
So?
She prompted her sister. Willow crossed her arms and glared at her for several minutes before changing the subject.
What were you doing when I got home?
Playing with my dolls.
Wraith said.
Mrs. Parks says that all you do is daydream. About your dolls?
Willow said.
She added a note to say that you're always dreaming about the future, and she's not sure it's healthy.
I thought having a good imagination was an asset.
Wraith said.
Asset.
Her sister corrected.
And there are limits to everything. Your teacher suggested that we ask you about your daydreams.
What do you want to know?
What do you dream about?
Willow asked. Her voice softened. Wraith was happy to share her dreams with her sister.
Getting married.
She was prompt in her reply.
And having babies. Alyssa thinks that 4 kids are perfect, but I want 7 or 8.
For the next half hour, she and her sister had a pleasant conversation. She was able to share her dream future. Wraith told her that she would meet Mr. Right sometime after she turned 21, and would get married just after she turned 23, and she would be pregnant right away and have a baby before she turned 24.
What makes 23 such a perfect age?
Willow asked.
I want to be a young mother, not old like.
She broke off. Her mother, Willow's stepmother, was nearly 37 when Wraith was born and would not play with her or do things with her that other girls' mothers did. Wraith was barely 8 when her mother discovered she had breast cancer and decided to live with cancer rather than live with only one breast. It was almost a full year since she passed away.
So you want to be a young mother?
Willow said slowly.
But why not 22 or even 18?
Wraith did not think her sister would make a good mother, and she was 18.
23 is perfect.
She repeated, unwilling to explain her reasons.
Promises we revere, contentment instead of fear.
Later that day, Willow went up to Wraith's room to talk with her.
Gerald is coming over later tonight. Do you think you could stay in your room?
Wraith detested Gerald. The way he looked at her was creepy. It was easy to promise to stay in her bedroom. She awoke disoriented sometime later, not sure what woke her up. She looked over at the window and saw that the moon was rising. She got up and left her room, intending to use the bathroom. It was dark in the hallway, but a light and noise were coming from her sister's room at the end of the hall. The door was partially open with a shaft of light shining on the banister rail. She was reaching for the bathroom doorknob when a moaning noise distracted her. Concerned, she walked to the end of the hallway, wondering what she would do if her sister was seriously ill. Once she got to the half-open door, she stared at the pimple-covered back of her sister's boyfriend. He was in bed with her sister and they were both moaning. It was only as some of the words her sister and Gerald were saying percolated through to her that she realized what she was seeing. She felt hot and knew her face would be brick red in embarrassment. She ran to the bathroom and stared at her expression in the mirror for several minutes before she returned to her bedroom. She felt sick to her stomach. The next morning, she was lying in bed when her sister came into the room. When Wraith asked about what she saw, Willow told her young sister how it felt to lose her virginity, telling her far more than Wraith wanted to hear. By the time Willow left for work, Wraith was feeling as if the dreams she had for the future were completely impossible. Willow told her that she had to do that if she ever wanted to have any babies. A week later their father was back from his travels, and Willow made a special dinner for his return meal. They were eating the meatloaf that was Willow's specialty, when she said baldly,
Dad, Roger proposed.
Roger?
Wraith was confused.
My boss?
Willow said.
He's just been offered a position at the university that will lead to tenure.
Where will you live?
Their father asked her. He looked peculiar. Willow shrugged.
Right now he's living with some of the other adjunct professors.
Wouldn't this house be perfect for the two of you?
Wraith gaped at her father. He was giving Willow their house.
What do you mean, Dad?
Willow asked.
Well, I've been offered an overseas position, but I couldn't bring Wraith. I thought you might stay here and keep your sister.
6 weeks later, Wraith watched her sister marry the tall, dark, and handsome Rogelio Aguirre. They made a beautiful couple. She liked him. He treated her much better than her sister's other boyfriends. When Wraith was 13, her sister's daughter, Angelica, was barely 6 months old, and Willow was divorced. She barely waited 3 days between her divorce and her second wedding. When her sister was the perfect age to marry, 23, Wraith was one of the bridesmaids for her sister's third wedding. She had 2 daughters that she left with a babysitter for the wedding and honeymoon. When Wraith graduated from high school and started to attend the local community college, her sister's third marriage was on the rocks. About the only blessing that Wraith could see in her sister's latest exploits was that she did not have a third child from her third marriage. For a year, Willow and her 2 daughters both moved back in with Wraith and their father. Willow found a new man and married him, moving with him to New Jersey. Shortly after they moved, 3 things happened in rapid succession. She graduated from community college, interviewed and got the job as assistant to an executive at the Jenner Corporation, and her father was killed in an airline disaster. Her father left her the house since Willow was now quite wealthy and had married into even more wealth. She felt empty on that first day she went to work. When she met her new boss, Yves Cormier, she was delighted to work with him. He learned about her personal tragedy and eased into the position of surrogate father for her, giving her the warmth and solace her father's empty house was incapable of providing.
The royal succession, Estolian traditions, promises we